everybody, welcome back to Board Online, Board Offline. As always, I'm Baker, and today we're going to finally be getting into the rules video for Dead of Winter. Now, I did the unboxing for this video quite some time ago, and I've gone through the Star Realm series since then and some other stuff, and so now we're finally going to get into the Dead of Winter rules and complete the series for that board game. Okay, so without anything further, here we go. Okay, so here you see the game board set up for a 4-player game of the scenario 8 Weeks of Darkness. You'll notice there are 7 locations. The colony, which is the starting location for all players. The police station. The grocery store. The school. The library. The hospital. And the gas station. At the colony you have 6 different entrances, each of them labeled 1 through 6. And it's important to note that even though there are 6 entrances, they each still count as a single location. Also note that each entrance for the colony has 3 locations for zombies before it's full. On the right side of the colony, you have a bunch of spaces for colony occupants. If for any reason during the game the colony occupants section fills up, you can't bring any more people into the colony. Down here you have the morale track, 10 through 0. You can see for this scenario it starts at 7. Over here you've got the round track, also 10 through 0. And for this scenario it starts at 8. Down in this section of the colony you have the food supply. Right now it's empty, but anytime you obtain any food for the colony, that's where you'll place the tokens. Here's where you place the main objective. Right next to the main objective you've got the waste pile, which is where all of your waste will accumulate as you use various items during the game. Right here, you've got the crisis deck, which has all kinds of terrible cards in them, which we'll get to. And right next to the crisis deck is where you put your contributions for the crisis. On a non-colony location card, you're going to find the name of the card in the top left, and then directly to the right of that, you'll see various symbols. In this case, the police station, those symbols mean that you're most likely to find weapons there. After that, fuel, followed by tools, food, and the least likely thing you're going to find there will be other survivors. Whereas with the grocery store, you can see food is the most likely, followed by medicine, tools, and then again the least likely is other survivors. On the survivor card at the bottom of the photo, you can see 3 spaces for the police station. Those are survivor spaces, and those range from 3 to 4, except for the gas station, which only has 2. Just like with the colony, you have zombie spaces. With the police station, you actually have 4 spots for zombies, and that ranges from 3 to 4 depending on which location you're at. You'll find an item deck at each location, and when you search, you will pull a card off of that item deck, and in this case you can see you found a weapon, and each location has item decks. When those item decks are gone, then there's no more searching to be done at that location. And last, at each location, you'll find these ear symbols, which is a noise indicator. And there's different things that can happen to cause you to generate noise. And basically, each noise token gives a 50-50 chance of bringing more zombies there, and we'll get more into that a little bit later. Each player is going to get one of these very useful player reference sheets. On the left, you can see it has the round summary, goes to the player phase and the colony phase. On the right, it's got all the different actions that require an action die, actions that do not require an action die. It's also got a spot for your unused action dice and your used action dice. On this side, you can place your group leader. Down at the bottom is where you can place your followers. And over here, you can place your secret objective. Let's take a closer look at the main objective card. You can see at the top, you've got the title of the scenario, 8 Weeks of Darkness. A little bit of setup information, in this case, tells you where to start the morale and round tracker at. Also tells you if you should add any helpless survivors and also any zombies to the colony or non-colony locations. Then you see it gives you your victory condition. In this case, you just have to survive 8 rounds. And how long the game is expected to go. In this case, a long game. And they range from either short, medium, or long. Also, if you flip it over, if you found that side is just not hard enough for you, this side with those exclamation point caution signs is the hardcore side. And you can see it's going to be much more difficult of a setup, and the victory conditions are also more difficult. Okay, your secret objective cards. Now with these, there's two kinds. First, you have your regular secret objective. Okay, in this case, it's called a new destination, and it gives you some stipulations as to how you're going to win. One is the main objective has been completed, so that's your first objective here. On top of that, you have at least 3 gasoline cards, or excuse me, 3 fuel cards in your hand. The second type of secret objective, which may or may not be in the game, is a betrayal secret objective. You can see here this one's called Obsessed, and you win the game if all of the following is true. Morale is at 0, meaning everyone else has lost. You have only 1 survivor in your following. You have at least 1 weapon card equipped to each survivor you control. You have at least 1 food, medicine, and fuel card in your hand. And starter items do not count. So, as you can see, a betrayal objective card is going to be in direct conflict with any of the regular cards because all of the regular ones are going to require the main objective to be completed, whereas betrayal is going to require morale to be at 0, which means the game has been lost for everyone else. All right, let's talk about the character cards for a minute. In the top right here, you see you've got the name and profession of the survivor here. And the profession really doesn't matter any for the game itself, but it does add a bit of theme, or kind of brings the theme together a bit. Up here in the top right, the first number you see there circled in red is going to be the character's influence. Now, influence determines a couple of things. One of the primary things it'll determine is who dies when a bite begins to spread. And then you can see underneath the influence is that little burst symbol, and in this case there's a 3+. That means that Rod Miller here is going to need a 3 or higher to attack a zombie or another survivor. With the magnifying glass, that's his search value, so again he's going to need a 3 or higher to complete a search. And then at the bottom of the card, they're going to have a special ability. In this case, Rod Miller, when moving, does not roll for exposure, which is a pretty fantastic ability and is why he's one of my, if not my very favorite character. And you'll see in this case it says he can use that anywhere. There are certain characters, such as Thomas Hart the Soldier, who have specific locations. His ability, which allows him to kill 2 zombies at the colony without rolling for exposure, requires him to be at the colony. You can see it says right there. Now, each player will be dealt 5 starter item cards at random. And we'll flip these over here. Here's an example of a starter item card. You can see in this case it's food. You get the picture up here showing you what it is. Food 1, which means you can put it in the waste pile and add 1 food token to the food supply. And you can see at the bottom it is a starter item card. It's worth noting that an item from a specific location, such as an item at the police station, will say police station at the bottom, which can get tricky for betrayers who are trying to spike the crisis contributions. So just to go over quickly the different types of items, when a card is requesting a specific type of item and it shows you a symbol, that symbol is what's important, not what the item is named or anything like that. So in this case, you have the food symbol, medicine symbol, fuel, weapons, tools, and books. All right, let's take a look at the crisis cards. Now you'll see here, you've again got a name. Then this symbol right here means you're going to need fuel equal to the number of non-exiled players. And if you fail, every crisis is going to have a consequence for failing. And in this case, non-exiled survivors cannot move until the end of the next round, and you lose 1 morale. Now, if you pass it, though, you can see at the bottom you have an optional add 2 additional fuel cards, gain 1 morale for preventing the crisis. Now, one of the big things about this game that sets it apart is this deck right here, the Crossroads deck. So when a player begins his turn, the player to the right, which will also be the last player to go, will draw a Crossroad card and look at it. And what you're going to look at initially is this italicized portion. And it says, in this case, if a non-exiled survivor the player controls is at the grocery store. And so if that condition is true, you would then immediately stop the game and read this portion here. Then you would come down here and read option 1 out loud. and then read option 2 out loud. And then in this case, the player right here who is at the grocery store will be the one who would make this choice. No one else makes the choice. There are certain Crossroad cards where everyone at the colony gets to vote, or everyone at a single location gets to vote. Hey everyone, as usual for my rules videos, you're going to see a couple of these videos that were filmed after the fact when I realized there's a couple things I didn't go over. So first off, let's go real quick through the setup. First, you're going to obviously place the colony and all the locations. There's no real order for them. They can go wherever you want to, really. Make sure everybody has reference sheets. Choose the objective. This can be randomly drawn, or you can just choose however you feel is the best way to do it. For the secret objectives, you need to take 2 non-betrayal cards per player, put them in a deck, put 1 betrayal card in there, shuffle them up, hand them out to all the players. If you want to make it more likely to have a traitor, you can do 1 non-betrayal card per player and 1 traitor card, and shuffle it up and hand them out that way. Make sure everybody gets 5 starter item cards. Give each player 4 survivors, and they choose 2 of those survivors, and then hand back the ones they didn't choose to be shuffled into the deck. And finally, the player with the leader of the highest influence will get the the first player token. So at the beginning of the player turn phase, what you would do is first reveal the crisis. So you can see we've got raiders, and we're going to need a number of food equal to the number of non-exile players in the crisis contribution. Next, everyone at the same time will roll the dice and place them down in their unused action dice section here. After everyone's done that, player turns begin. Now let's go through the actions that require an action die. So let's say Rod Miller is at the police station, and he wants to attack this zombie right here. What he's going to have to do is he's going to look and see, okay, he's got a 3+ attack value. So you can take either the 5 or the 6, and let's say the 5, move it over to the used action dice section, and then this zombie is automatically dead. However, it's not over yet. Now, Rod has to take the exposure die and roll it. And you can see he got frostbite, which means he would take a frostbite wound, put it on his character, which is not very good, and he's hopefully can get that healed up. And while we're talking about this is the first time we've really taken a look at the exposure die. So let's see here. This side, nothing happens when you roll it, and that's fantastic. Right here, you've got a wound, and once you have 3 wounds, you die. Right here is frostbite, which you just saw. The thing with frostbite is at the beginning of each round, you gain an additional regular wound if you have frostbite, so you need to get that healed up quickly. And the worst one, though, is of course the tooth. If you roll the tooth, you're dead, and then the bite spreads to whoever else is at your colony. So if Rod Miller here rolled a tooth, okay, you see that right there. He rolled that tooth, and he's got Olivia Brown there with him. What happens is Rod's dead, all right, he's gone. However, Olivia Brown now has a chance. Since she's the only one there, she can roll the exposure die again. And, okay, she's fine. She rolled a blank. Nothing happens. If she rolled anything else, even a regular wound, she would be dead as well. Okay. Now, a different scenario, though. Let's say all 3 of them are there. Rod rolls the tooth. So Rod's dead. Now you check and see between Olivia Brown and Daniel Smith, who has the lowest influence. Daniel has 66. Olivia has 56. So it's going to be Olivia Brown. So she's the one who has been bitten next. Now, she has a choice. She can either die immediately and end the spread there, or she can roll the exposure die. And if she rolls a blank, everything's fine. If she had rolled a wound, she would be dead just like before, only now, not only is she dead, but she spread the bite to Daniel as well. And if you were at the colony and had a whole bunch of people there, you could see how it could spread very quickly. And keep in mind, also, when we haven't covered this yet, every time a survivor dies, morale drops by 1. So if you had a bite spread through a whole colony, you could lose the game right there very quickly. One final attack option. Let's say Rod decides to attack Daniel Smith for whatever reason. And you'll do the same thing as before. You'll take an action die of 3 or more, move it to the unused or to the used section. However, now you got to look and see. Daniel Smith has an attack value of 2+, which means Rod's going to have to roll this and roll a 2 or less. And he didn't do it, so he fails in the attack and has just made an enemy for sure. If, however, he had rolled a 2 or less, what that would mean is Daniel would then take a wound, a regular wound just like that, and the player controlling Rod would take one random card from Daniel's hand and put it in his hand, just like that. In this case, he stole some fuel. Might be worth attacking him for that. One note on attacking survivors. In this case, Rod Miller would never be able to attack Talia Jones because they're in the same group. You're not allowed to attack survivors in your own group. Okay, now let's say Rod wants to search the police station. So he looks over here, a 3+ for his search ability, moves the 6 over here into the used action dice. He's going to take the top card from the police station into his hand. And you can see he got the pistol. So now he's going to say, do I want to keep that or do I want to keep searching? If he continues to search, and it's on with using the same die, then first he's going to take a noise token, place it right there on that spot, take another card. This time he got an outsider card, which we'll talk more about them in a little bit. And he's going to say, I guess, you know what, I'm going to search one more time. I'm going to rummage around, make a little bit more noise. Put another noise token there, pull off a third card. So now he's got a weapon, an outsider, and food. And he's going to say to himself, you know what, I was better off sticking with what I got originally. I'm going to take these two, stick them back in the deck, and you actually put them on the bottom of the deck, and then the weapon would go into his hand. And then you can see with one die, he was able to look at 3 cards. That took 2 noise tokens to do so, and he only kept 1 card. However, if, on the other hand, let's move these back over here. All right. Now let's say he had a really good roll, and that's what he's got. He can use 1 to search, pull this card off, and he got sniper rifle. He's like, that's great. I want to keep that. But you know what? I want to search again. And now he can use another die without causing any noise to look at and keep another. He's got some food. And he can use the third die again because it's still over the 3 necessary. Move it over, look at and keep, and you're good to go. And now he's got a pretty full hand, and it's probably going to get some people pretty suspicious about him at this point. So now let's talk about barricades. Let's say we've got this position here, and you can see Rod's there. You got 3 zombies, only 1 space left. And maybe he doesn't really feel like attacking any of the zombies right now to make sure that he doesn't get overrun next turn. What he would do is he would take any of his dice. There's no minimum for this, so he's going to take the 1 because otherwise that's pretty useless to him. He's going to move it over here. You come up here, grab one of the barricades, put it right in that spot, and now that will prevent the next zombie from filling that space. What will actually happen is when you should put a zombie there, instead the barricade breaks and the space remains empty. Another action you could take is clean waste. Now this is another action that does not require any minimum number. Again, Rod could take this 1, move it over here, and oh wait, Rod's not at the colony. That's right. So this would be if Rod is in the colony. You must be at the colony to clean waste. You can't do it from out and about anywhere, which means that frequently you're going to have to bring somebody back here if most of your guys are spending their time away from the colony. So Rod's at the colony. He's moved the 1 over to the used action dice. He now can take 3 cards from the waste pile and remove them from the game. Okay, so Rod's back at the colony, and he realizes Daniel Smith over here might be in a little bit of trouble with these zombies over here. So he's going to use the attract zombie action. And what that means is he can take any die, Move it over here. And then pull 2 zombies from any one location to the location he's currently at. So he's going to take these 2 zombies, and he's making some noise over here or something, and he can place them in any location here at the colony. Let's say he just puts them one here and one here because he thinks that's a good idea. Okay, now let's take a look at Rod's owner's hand here. And we can see that one thing he's got is food. And on your turn, you can play as many cards from your hand as you want without using any sort of dice. It's a dice-free action. If he wants to play food, he's going to take it. And you can see right on the card it says waste pile. That means by using this, it's going into the waste pile. Add 1 food token to the food supply. So in this case, you'd put that in the waste pile. You'd go up here, get 1 food token, and come and put it into the food supply right here while killing zombies with your hand. If, on the other hand, let's say right here with the pistol, you can see this one actually says equip. So in this case, the card does not go in the waste pile. Instead, you're going to equip it directly to a survivor. So let's say you wanted to equip it to Rod. You would slide it kind of up underneath like this, and that's how you equip a weapon or any other sort of equipment to a survivor. It's also important to note that whether it breaks things thematically or not, it is perfectly legitimate for a character to have as many items equipped to them as they want. There's no maximum limit. Now let's say Rod's owner is concerned about the crisis. In his turn, he's also allowed to put as many cards into the crisis contribution as he desires. So let's say he looks down here and he sees, okay, we need food. You know what, I'm going to go ahead and put both of these food cards into the crisis contribution. And so now he's contributed 2, and they only need 2 more in order to survive this crisis. It's important to note that with crisis contributions, it requires a certain number of cards, not food tokens or something like that. So, for instance, with this, asking for food equal number of non-exile players, you're going to need 4 food cards. So even if you had a food card that provided 2 or 3 food tokens, that still only counts as 1 towards successfully completing the crisis. On your turn, you may also move each of your survivors 1 time. So Rod can move from the colony to the library. And because of Rod's special ability, which I remind you is right there, he does not have to roll for exposure. But let's say the other player, controlled by, I believe I was calling him Todd. His name's Rod. Anyway, we'll call him Todd. Talia Jones is also controlled by the same player, and she's going to move to the grocery store. Now, by moving to the grocery store, she has a choice. She can either spend fuel, which you can see right there says, play this card when moving a survivor you control, do not roll for exposure. And if you move it there, or if you use that, you're going to have to move that to the waste pile. However, let's say she doesn't do that. She's going to take her chances. She's going to have to roll the exposure die and see what happens. And she lucked out. She's good to go. When rolling for exposure on movement, the bite would actually spread at the destination. So let's say Talia was moving from the grocery store to the colony, rolled a tooth, the bite spreads here, not back at the grocery store where there's no other colonists. Now let's say this player has this 2 and really wants it to be a 3. He can do the usually unpopular action of taking a food token and discarding it and rolling this up to the next level. Keep in mind that if it is already at a 6, you cannot spend food tokens to roll it up to nothing. On a player's turn, he can request an item from any other player. It doesn't even have to be a specific player. He can put out there, hey, does anybody have some food? I'd like some food. Now, this has to happen on that player's turn. And so he'll request food or tools or whatever it is. Any player can then give that player the card he asked for. The card must then immediately be revealed and used for the purpose on the card. Or really could be used for any purpose that is immediately available. For instance, if you request fuel, you don't have to use it to move. You could use it in combination with the lighter to kill some zombies. It's important to remember it must be used immediately and it cannot be used for the crisis. Real quick, going back to equipped items. Once an item is equipped, it cannot be unequipped for any reason unless a card specifically tells you to do so, or let's say Rod and Talia were both at the library. The player that controls Rod could then take the Colt 1911 pistol off of Rod and put it on Talia. The other way that could happen is if the sheriff and Rod were there, or now, let's say Talia now, because Talia's got it equipped. So if Talia and the sheriff were at the library together, on Talia's turn, she could unequip it and then move it over, give it to Daniel Smith, the sheriff. Keep in mind, though, that with equipped cards such as the pistol that have a once per round ability, in this case, once per round, when the survivor performs an attack, do not roll for exposure. Let's say that the previous owner, Talia, had used it to perform an attack already this round. Daniel Smith would not then be able to use it to perform another attack. The once per round is for the entire round, not just for the current owner. Once per player turn, a vote to exile can be initiated. When the vote occurs, it must be simultaneous, thumbs up or thumbs down. You're not allowed to initiate a vote to exile yourself. And as with all other ties in the game, a tie will be broken by the first player. Moving on to the colony phase, you'll perform these in the exact order that shows here, just as you did in the player phase. First, you're going to have to pay food. And this only applies to survivors currently at the colony, both player survivors as well as helpless survivors. And you're going to count them up. We've got 2, 4, 6, 7 colonists here. Divide that by 2. In this case, you got 3.5, so you're going to have to round up, and that's 4. So you'll need 4 food tokens. And oh, look, we have 4 food tokens here. You'll take all 4 of them and discard them back into the supply, and everyone has been fed for this round. However, let's say we only had 3 food tokens. And again, we need 4 because we have 7 colonists here. You only have 3, so those food tokens are going to stay where they are. Instead, you're going to grab a starvation token. And you're going to place that in the food supply and decrease morale by 1. Let's say the next turn comes around and you've managed to get another food token in there, so you're back to 4. Again, you need 4. You're good to go. You take this out, and the starvation token, even though it's still in there, has no effect because you were able to successfully feed the colonists. But then the next turn comes around, and somehow you just haven't been able to get any more food in there, and so you're going to have to take another starvation token, place it in there. You now have 2 total, and this time it does affect your morale again because you starved. 1, 2 morale points, it goes down. The idea is you never forget the last time you starved. And so even though these tokens don't affect you every time they're in there, they do affect you cumulatively each time you starve. Next on the list is check waste. We'll look up here. If we have 10 or more, we'll lose 1 morale for every 10 cards in there. If we have less than 10, everything is okay, nothing happens. Next, we'll resolve the crisis. So we look and see, we've got these cards here. You're going to shuffle them up because you got to make sure that you don't know where they came from. And then flip them over. And you can see in this case, 4 food tokens, or excuse me, 4 food cards. So we passed it. But what if we flipped it over and it was like this? Well, you still have 4 food cards, but what happens is the one that didn't belong, in this case the fuel, actually subtracts away from the total. So it's as if you only have 3 food cards, and you in fact have failed the crisis. Next, you're going to add zombies, starting with the colony. And what you're going to do is you're going to determine this exactly the same way you did the food. You've got 7 colonists here, which means 4 zombies are going to show up. And you're going to add the first zombie to doorway 1, the second zombie to doorway 2, then doorway 3, and then doorway 4, just like that. Now, let's say that in fact you needed to add 8 zombies. You continue around, so we just finished with doorway 4 right there. We come to 5, got a zombie in there, so we add 1, to it anyway. Doorway 6 is the same. And now zombie 7 comes back to doorway 1, and zombie 8 goes to doorway 2. Next, we'll look at our non-colony locations. The police station has no survivors, so it doesn't matter there. The grocery store has 1 survivor, it gets 1 zombie. The school has 1 survivor, it gets 1 zombie. The library has 3 survivors, and out here in the non-colony locations, we actually add zombies 1 for 1 as far as survivors go. So the library needs to get 3 zombies. So go 1, 2, and now there's no more spaces for zombies. So what happens? An overrun occurs. And what you'll do is you'll look to see who has the lowest influence, which in this case is Talia Jones, and she is killed. Now, overruns do not cause a spread effect. It's considered that, the zombies overran the location, somebody got bit, everyone knew immediately because everybody was involved, and the bite didn't spread because people knew she was bitten. Let's say we had this scenario, though. 3 survivors, 1 open space, 1 space with a zombie, and 1 with a barricade. Now, zombies are always going to go to empty spaces first. So this zombie comes in here at that empty space. Now, we need 2 more zombies because there's 3 survivors total. The next zombie actually dies on this barricade and breaks the barricade in the process. So it's gone. The 3rd zombie then comes in here like that. And don't forget about the noise tokens. So we've got 2 noise tokens at this police station because of all the rustling around we were doing, searching for who knows what. So what you have to do is you have to take a die, and for the first noise token, we're going to roll it. We got a 5. 4, 5, or 6 means we're good. All right, so you take that noise token off, place it back in the supply, and now for the next one, we got a 3. We're not good for that. 1, 2, or 3, you actually add a zombie to the police station. Next in the colony phase is to check the main objective. In this case, we survive 8 rounds. Well, we're still on round 8, so obviously we have not completed this victory condition. If, however, you had completed the victory condition, the game immediately ends, and everyone who has completed both this and whatever else their secret objective cards said, they've all won the game. Now keep in mind that there is a very specific time to check main objective. The game does not end the moment the main objective has been achieved. It only ends when you get to step 5 of the colony phase, meaning you have to pay food, check waste, resolve the crisis, and add zombies all before the main objective can trigger the end of the game. Then, after you check the main objective, if the game is still going, you move the round tracker, and then you'll pass the first player token, which always passes to the right, counterclockwise. Now, if for any reason you need to add a survivor to the colony, they always start in the colony. You cannot add a survivor to an outside location without first adding them to the colony. So if you had this outsider card, you would discard this card from the game, which, by the way, side note, outsider cards are not required to be played. They stay in your hand until you choose to play them. They can even be requested by other players, and they count as item cards while they're in your hand. So in this case, you would draw the top survivor from the survivor deck and add them to your following, place their matching standee at the colony. And this doesn't go in the waste pile, it's out of the game. If a player has both of their survivors die, they would then discard their entire hand, draw 1 survivor from the top of the survivor deck, and place that survivor over in the colony. Keep in mind though, let's say Talia died. Okay, you would not change the number of action die you have until the beginning of the next round when it says roll action dice. That's the point where you determine how many action dice you were supposed to roll. Now let's say this player over here was acting super shady and everyone decided they were going to vote to exile them. And they successfully exile them. What would happen is this player would then draw an exile card and they're going to read it. If you are not the betrayer, and you can see the title of this one is Atonement. If you're not the betrayer, reveal your secret objective to all players and remove it from the game. Your new secret objective is now the following. So you can see they were not the betrayer. So you would tell everyone in the game, hey, look, you made a mistake. It's not me. Show them what it is. Discard it. And now, in this case, their new objective is the main objective has been completed. So technically, not really a new objective, but no one knows what this is. This is now your secret objective, so you would keep this secret right here. However, let's say they had been the betrayer. The first goal of your secret objective has changed to the following. You must have at least 1 fuel, 1 food, 1 medicine, and 1 tool card in your hands. For instance, if you had the obsessed betrayal card I showed you earlier, you would really be hurting pretty bad, because now, instead of morals at 0, number 1 is to have those cards. And then you still have to complete all the rest of that. You have only 1 survivor in your following. All that stuff. So you can see how this card, not always will it be easier than what your current objective is. Sometimes it might be, sometimes it might really mess you up. Okay, if you're exiled, you do not add helpless survivors to the colony. So if you play an outsider card, you just get the survivors. The helpless survivors, they don't count. They don't go anywhere. Any new survivors that you get are added to a non-colony location. You can no longer spend food at the colony to roll up a die. However, instead you can spend food cards in your hand to roll up a die. You also don't contribute to the waste in the colony. Any cards you play that normally would go in the waste pile are instead removed from the game. And finally, this is probably the most important reason why somebody might exile a person from the colony, deaths when in exile don't count against morale. So remember, as far as winning and losing goes, if morale hits 0, the game ends immediately. If the round marker hits 0, the game ends immediately. And if you check the main objective during that step of the colony phase, and the main objective is completed, the game ends immediately. The only people who win are the ones who have completed all of the stipulations on their secret objectives. Okay, so there you have it. That's the rules for Dead of Winter. Now, there is a frequently asked questions that has already been released by Plaid Hat Games that John Gilmore and Isaac Vega and the crew over at Plaid Hat have been working on. And I didn't include any of the clarifications in this video, because that's a document that likely is to continue changing. And instead of giving you the current version, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the link for the FAQ in the description below. So be sure to check that out. Doesn't really change anything. It just clarifies some of the ambiguities maybe that you found in the rulebook. So hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. If you like my channel, please subscribe. And you can look me up on BGG. And until next time, if you're bored online, bored offline.